So I get the pleasure of introducing Asia, and he has spent a decade in the agency space as a brand strategist and creative director, facilitating team collaboration in the form of both client workshops and managing his own remote team. In his spare time, he has developed a love for tabletop role playing. It was only a matter of time before his worlds collided, revealing the opportunity to leverage his increasingly popular hobby to secure real business results by turning everyday team agencies into fearless adventuring parties. Now, harnessing his hard earned team building wisdom, agency specific intelligence, and a dash of friendly charisma, Asia is helping other agency leaders find the magic in this remote transition that we're all going through, right? Like, I know that there was several of us or several studios that were remote before 2020, but it feels like almost all of us are dabbling in this space, going full remote after the fact. So with that, I will turn it over to Asia.
All right, thank you. It's Asa, by the way. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for showing up. I really appreciate it. Welcome everybody to Slaying the Dragon of Remote Culture through the magic of Dungeons and Dragons. So, as Rob mentioned, remote transition is something we've all been going through, and even if you were never in person and your team has always been remote, the remote environment makes it difficult to develop, galvanize, and retain, and even attract top talent. We have really high standard industry turnover in agencies, 30% average, and it's getting higher. We have rampant disengagement, a loss of creative chemistry reported by people, loneliness and disconnection, and low morale, dwindling culture, and frankly, quirky talent, right? A lot of agencies hire people who are creative, technical people. They're not really traditional corporate employees. They don't necessarily respond to typical team building. And we've lost those in-office social gaming perks, like ping pong tables, right? So there's no regular space for people to step back from their work, connect with each other, develop camaraderie, gather inspiration, separate from their work. As Rob mentioned, I'm Asa. I've spent the past 10 years as a brand strategist and creative director. I've managed my own team. I've led workshops with other teams. And in my free time, I developed a love for Dungeons and Dragons. And when seeing agencies, including my own, struggling with remote team management, the dots connected, and I thought, why wouldn't we apply this amazing tool to solve these pressing issues? So right now, the existing options you have to choose from, the solutions that are out there, are what I would like to call mass market team building solutions. Think virtual escape rooms, murder mysteries, office trivia, bingo, cooking, happy hours, right? We're trying to replicate that in-office experience, but it's not working because we have 150 to 100 person events on a massive Zoom call where people hold up their s'mores to the camera. And I'm sure a lot of people enjoy it, but a lot of people also really don't enjoy it. They don't get anything out of it. And it's not creating those genuine connections. Instead, it feels like forced fun to a lot of people. And really, who wants to go grocery shopping for a team building event, right? It feels like they're being forced to do more work rather than something actually fun. And the virtual happy hours tend to feel very unnatural to people. The second thing agencies are doing is trying to replicate the elusive, what we're calling in-office experience with expensive, short-lived retreats. These also perform fairly well, right? People enjoy them, but they're logistical nightmares, right? It takes a long time to plan them, schedule them. They're exorbitantly expensive for paying for traveling and hosting. And even for participants, even if they have a great time while they're there, it's also time they're spending away from their families, from their pets, from their responsibilities or their hobbies for a work-related event. Also, these team building events, whether they're retreats or big online events, they're only budgeted 1 to 4 times a year. And I think that is a unfortunate carryover from in-person work where people already had in-person interactions every day, and it made sense to budget team building events 1 to 4 times a year. But now they don't have that opportunity to connect on a regular basis and develop that camaraderie from day to day. And 1 to 4 times a year just isn't enough. And we're seeing that in how teams are responding to the remote transition. Overall, these solutions are not working, right? Even if it seems like maybe they're working from the top level, I've spoken to a lot of team members. I've spoken to a lot of people, operations leaders and HR managers and creative directors. They're not working as well as we'd like them to. And team building has become sort of a dirty word, kind of a cringy word. I was just speaking to the VP of people at a agency the other day, somebody who you would think loves team building and thinks it's great. And I said, when I say team building, how does it make you feel? And she said, I cringe. I just cringe. I don't like how it feels. And I think most people feel that way. It's developed a really gross feeling over time, especially because when we think team building, we think just corporate hell, trust falls and passing the ball back and forth and sharing personal facts. It just feels forced and uncomfortable with people and something they'd rather avoid. And if they're not feeling open to it, they can't feel engaged. They can't actually get benefits out of it if they're not present, if they're not into the experience. Another aspect here is that most team building activities have to do with sharing personal information. And something I've noticed is remote employees don't really want to do that. Even in teams where there's a lot of pre-existing trust, people are very hesitant to share personal information because they feel it might be used against them, especially when you're not working in person and you don't really know somebody as well as you'd like to in remote work. You're very wary of sharing things about yourself or your ambitions or your stresses or problems because you're concerned maybe this is a bad move or an unwise thing to do to share this information. And so much team building has to do with what are your interests, what concerns you, where are you from, what do you do? But what I've started to notice is that friendships don't necessarily develop through shared interests, right? Or being from the same place, or like, oh, you went to this school too, cool. Like it doesn't really create friendship or camaraderie. And even then, coworkers don't need to be friends. A lot of people don't even want to be friends with their coworkers anymore. They want to have a separate work and personal life, but they do need to be pals, right? They need to get along. They need to have chemistry. They need to have comfort with each other. And that's what really allows for stellar creative work, lasting loyalty. It's that shared humor, that creative chemistry, just feeling comfortable with each other, being able to feel like you're, not to be punny, but on the same team, right? Not like you're adversaries or you're trying so hard to connect across a divide. You're just on the same team. You get each other. You're down to clown, for lack of better words. You just are on the same page. That's what people need. They don't need to know everything about each other. And so current team building solutions are trying to achieve friendships when it's just not going to happen in most cases. So agencies, from my perspective, need something different and innovative. Agencies are filled with alternative people and alternative leadership who, by virtue of the kind of people that we are, we look at the world and we say, I don't like that. I want to do this differently. I want to work against the status quo. So why are we as agency leaders looking to what everyone else is doing and imitating it for team building when we don't do that for anything else we do in our businesses? So we need something more engaging, right, than a 50, 100-person event. Everybody's on a Zoom call. Nobody's really personally engaging or sharing. Something oriented towards small groups, because we know that's where people actually start to bond and connect. Something consistent enough to create in-office-like chemistry and bonds that could even come close to spending every day in an office together. And really, especially this year, when I hear a lot of agencies are struggling financially or with shrinking their teams, something that is a proven way to work better together, increase productivity, increase morale with a concrete ROI. And believe it or not, the answer is Dungeons and Dragons. It sounds fanciful and ridiculous, but it's working. It's working really well. So what is D&D? What is Dungeons and Dragons? And you'll see a couple pictures here of teams that have played with us. What is D&D? It's collaborative storytelling. So you tell a story together in your shared imagination in a medieval fantasy setting usually. So think Shrek more than Lord of the Rings. It tends to be goofy and wild, and you're slaying monsters, storming castles, saving the world by communicating and telling a wild, ridiculous story together that makes everyone laugh and feel like heroes. We use dice to simulate risk and fate. So we encourage smart risks and working together. And what this does is it makes the team feel like a real team, a band of superheroes, almost like medieval Avengers, where everybody has their own strengths and skills that they can rely on each other for. And they all have true agency. So they're not limited to a specific path. They can literally do anything they can think of in their imagination, and that the dice will allow based on the risk and fate. So this gives them the opportunity for a ton more creative and personal expression. I think we all know that play and creativity are directly connected. You can't really be creative without play, and the best ideas come about while playing. So what this does is disconnects people from the everyday. It's a space separate from work. And that's something we really emphasize when we're introducing teams to the game is we say, let's turn off our work-related notifications. Let's separate ourselves. This is not a work activity. This is separate from work. And we ran studies, we ran surveys. People who acknowledged that they were truly present had a much better time and saw better benefits than people who couldn't turn off their Slack notifications or couldn't give their full attention. And those people were rare, but they definitely had lower scores in terms of the benefits they saw. So this ability to disconnect, surface childlike creativity and innocence, it makes people more vulnerable and more themselves. When we're at work, we feel like we have to be adults, just as a general rule. But being an adult is not necessarily the best way to be creative and do innovative work and connect with clients and connect with your coworkers. This pulls out that childlike innocence and creativity and openness that actually enables those sorts of connections. What this also does is it's a no stakes practice of soft skills and ideal team dynamics, unless you consider defeating an imaginary dragon to be low stakes. I think it's no stakes personally, but it's a practice of soft skills and ideal team dynamics, soft skills like leadership, collaboration, delegation, communication, emotional intelligence, and there's no concern about it affecting real life projects. So your team doesn't necessarily have to be practicing their synergy and collaboration and discovering their strengths and weaknesses while working on real work. They can do it in this no stakes setting and practice having that ideal synergy without it affecting real life work. It also levels the playing ground of sense of humor. If any of you have joined your remote team in the past or brought on new people, that tends to be the biggest obstacle. It's like there's already kind of an existing culture and sense of humor on the team. People already sort of get each other. And then you come on board and it's like, okay, I know if I was in person with these people, I'd be able to get along with them and joke around. But it just, for some reason, that remote blockade makes it really difficult to get on the same page, a sense of humor. And when you can't laugh together, there's just this sensation that you're not really connecting. So what this does is because these adventures, like Shrek, for example, as a reference point, are so universally goofy and wild. People are, kicking gnomes off of cliffs and doing backflips off of boats into lava. Like it's inherently goofy and funny, and everybody can agree. Like it just levels that playing ground of sense of humor. Most importantly, if any of you have played, then you know this creates real memories of being in person with your coworkers. It feels like a vivid shared dream. I have played personally probably hundreds of hours of D&D over the past 12 years of my life. I remember just about everything that's ever happened. And I don't know if it's kind of a memory palace thing, if you've ever heard of that term, but having it stored in the context of a story makes it so much easier to remember things that happened, the emotional moments, the suspense, the intrigue, the action. And this is basically as close as you can get to being together in person, despite being far, far away from each other in real life. But of course, it's a fraction of the inconvenience and expense of an actual in-person retreat. And even when people are in person at a retreat, they're still not necessarily connecting with each other in a vulnerable and open and authentic and playful way. A lot of times those events in person are still related to lectures and activities that are very distinctly and directly work related. So this creates real memories of being in person while also being low stakes and fun. If you've seen D&D played before and you haven't played it, or you have played it, you probably think of it as something pretty nerdy, something really dense and hard to get into. You've seen the rule book and it's this thick. I am terrible at board games. I have never played actual D&D in my entire life, which sounds kind of ridiculous because I'm running this company, but if I have to learn more rules than can fit on a half page, I'm lost. That's just how my brain works. And I didn't get into D&D until I discovered a format of it that was simple, collaborative, and improvised. So I took that format that I had always learned and I transformed it further into something that's accessible for beginners and introverts. Players start playing in the first 5 minutes of our sessions and they figure it out right away, no problem. It's great for introverts who really, the problem with virtual escape rooms or murder mysteries or happy hours is first of all, they very much appeal to extroverts, people who are comfortable in the situations, and introverts tend to shy away. So what they do is they further embed those existing dynamics in a way that makes it difficult to actually make progress in your synergy as a team. And the people who are more likely to speak up or who are more vocal tend to shut out the people who aren't as outgoing. We also redesigned it for team building and bonding. So everything people can do in the game is directly related to helping each other. So for example, somebody in the group might be a healer who can heal the other players when they get hurt, or somebody might have a mastermind move. There's a strategist in real life, And in the game, they can create a heist plan. And if people follow their heist plan, they're going to get a bonus on their dice rolls. So they can all help each other. Or maybe somebody in real life, they consider themselves to be a wizard in our assessment. They love to give people advice. In the game, their coworkers can ask them for advice and get a bonus to their dice roll. So it's a way to start developing those instincts. As I just mentioned, teammates play as themselves at work to develop and grow. People take an assessment, a quick and easy assessment at the beginning of the games, and it determines what sort of hero they are. Maybe they're a knight or a wizard or a ranger, and that's directly based on what they consider their strengths at work to be and how they approach problems and what their coworkers can count on them for. So not only does this help coworkers recognize each other, like, oh, okay, you're a mystic. I got you. I know your archetype. I know how to work with you. But also within themselves, like, oh, I never really thought about it, but I guess I am a maverick. Like I am great at motivating people and pioneering new ideas, but maybe risk assessment is an area I should be working on. So it can help people recognize those areas for personal development as well. And they can develop those areas in the game rather than taking risks at work with clients. The games are also completely improvised based on player input and creativity. So I come to these games and my other quest guides or facilitators come to these games with nothing prepared except for whatever happened last time if it's a subsequent game. So everything is based on, hey, player, you look around the corner and what do you see? And it's inspired by the words speaker and spray. They all come up with something that's super creative and interesting, and they all play off of each other's ideas and tell the story together. Most importantly, what we transformed it into is an opportunity for creative problem solving and overcoming obstacles together, building that faith in each other, and realizing that even if they don't think of themselves as a creative person, everybody ends up being super creative. I hear all the time, I'm kind of worried about this. Like, I don't think I'm a creative person. They're wrong. They're wrong every single time. They are always coming up with amazing ideas on the spot. They're hilarious, they're goofy, and they will really, really surprise you with what they create together. This format, what it also does is it allows for custom team building objectives and timely goals. So maybe your team, you recognize they're struggling with burnout or time management or emotional intelligence, communication, negotiation, presentation, any of these skills, whereas other team building events, they're more so broad application. Like a virtual escape room is always going to be about problem solving and information gathering. You're not going to learn about different topics. And even though these games are totally improvised, we can shape them as we play because just being skilled facilitators, we can shape them to sort of teach lessons in an undetectable manner that allows people to learn those lessons subconsciously. So maybe with time management, for example, they are racing another group, an imaginary group of adventurers that's working against them through a forest. And that group is managing their time really well. And maybe our group is getting caught up doing something goofy. And by the end, we say, hey, they actually beat you. Why do you think that happened? And then they're talking about their time management. And they're not even realizing, like, oh, I just learned something about work. They never think about that. It's something that we hear very frequently from our players is this didn't feel like a forced, oh, you can use this in your work environment. It just happens. And over time, they develop those subconscious tendencies and beliefs and habits about how to work better together. Role playing, meaning they're playing as a character, also creates a degree of separation, like a masquerade. Think about masquerades, right? What people do at masquerades, they say what they're really thinking. They do things they might not otherwise do. They have a level of comfort because of that subconscious barrier between who they are and who they're acting to be. So what this does is it allows for more vulnerability. People often divulge personal insights and facts that they would never say to their coworkers otherwise. But even then, it's not dangerous in that way because you can't be sure whether they're talking about their character or themselves. So we've had people say, well, my character is great at making bagels because when I grew up, I had to earn people's approval by doing favors for them, or I feel like I had to earn friendships by being generous. And your coworkers hear that and they go, are they talking about themselves? And no matter what, you think, okay, well, now maybe they are talking about themselves. And now I know, right? Now I know I shouldn't take advantage of this person's generosity because they're probably being more generous with me because they think they need my approval. So there's these small personal insights that aren't completely vulnerable or direct. And people, again, don't even realize what they're saying because it's just what comes to mind in those moments when they're portraying a character. Something else we're doing is we're trying to turn the traditional team bonding model on its head by offering an ongoing subscription option. So rather than 1 to 4 events per year, this is something that you can do for an hour a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month as a way to keep morale high, keep practicing those dynamics, onboard and offboard employees, bring them on. They can recognize each other's archetypes very quickly. And our hope with this is that agencies with your interest in alternative solutions are going to say, hey, corporations with 700 employees or 1,000 employees can do whatever they like. They can do their 2 times a year team building events and hope for the best. We're going to try something different. We're going to try something that keeps everybody on the same page. When you think about, a gym membership or going to a therapist, for example, nobody expects to get positive results from going to the gym 4 times a year or going to a therapist 4 times a year. It's something you do on a regular basis if you want to get real results. And so we're trying to apply that same philosophy to team building. If you want real, measurable, long-term results, you have to put in the time. And based on our calculations and the data we have so far, the time spent, even if it's an hour a week, is more than made up in recovered time of higher productivity, better communication, better synergy. So right now, what people operations leaders are forced to do is find culture perks, employee benefits, team building programs, learning and development training programs, and it's expensive, right? We don't necessarily have the money for this at this point. So our goal is that this is all those things all in one. A culture perk. I feel like Steve Jobs introducing the iPhone. It's an internet communicator. It's a music playing device. It's a phone. It's a minute. No, it's a phone. It's a culture perk. It's an employee benefit. It's a learning and development program. And it's all one thing that takes place at the same time. So on our quests, creatives get clever, right? Strategists devise schemes, developers dungeon delve, planners become pathfinders. And as a result, we're seeing fantastic outcomes. And I don't mean to brag, but here's the data. Here's the hard data from our beta with agencies you might recognize from the Bureau. So with Focus Lab, all of these were over just 4 1-hour sessions, so over just 1 month. Focus Lab saw an average, and I won't read all of these, I'll let you read them at your own pace, but I'll do the highlights. At Focus Lab, we had an average of 30% increase in team bond across the board, but individuals had as high as 50% reported better synergy. So they were asked questions on a scale of 1 to 10 for all of these. I feel like I know my coworkers' strengths and weaknesses and how to work well with them. If they went from a 4 to an 8 by the end, that was a 50% increase, for example. At Yeti, we saw as high as an 80% increase in their ability to have positive conflict with each other and feel comfortable with that. That was a custom goal they set. They felt that the team was struggling to communicate directly with each other about difficult subjects without using management as intermediaries, and management was frustrated by that. And now they improved their ability to do that by 80% because they were arguing about whether to adopt a lizard. Like, it's just so ridiculous. And you can actually see a video of that on our website. It's so goofy and stupid, but they're standing up for their values. They're getting frustrated with each other in a lighthearted way. Like, what are you telling me? We can't adopt this dangerous 6-foot lizard. He's insane. Like, yeah, but he's cute and he wants a family. We can't leave him behind. It just develops these dynamics. Deep Roots, for example, so as high as 100% positive conflict, and Convince and Convert was by far the craziest. We had as high as 300% increase in team bond over 4 sessions and 133% better synergy. But on average, as you can see, the ones that don't say as high as, we see about 30 to 40% improvements in every area: creative inspiration, bond, synergy, etc. So based on those stats, and hopefully this doesn't come across as too salesy. It's really not my intent with this slide. I just want to help illustrate the benefit of this and why it's actually a concrete thing. Because you hear Dungeons and Dragons, you think nonsense. It actually makes a lot of sense, and that's why I want to show this. So over the course of a year of biweekly play, so if all those stats from the previous slide were achieved in just 4 sessions, this would be 24 sessions. Over the course of 24 sessions in a year, it doesn't seem unreasonable at all. It seems conservative to me, actually, to assume a 5% increase in productivity due to improved team communication, synergy, and creativity, a 5% increase in project efficiency because they have a better understanding of their strengths, their motivators, and working styles, especially from management who can better delegate tasks, a 5% reduction in recruitment cost because your culture is stronger, that they have a better employer brand as being a cool agency. Hey, I can go play D&D at this agency. That's awesome. Why would I work somewhere else? A 5% reduction in turnover because of higher loyalty. A big piece of this is that people are developing such strong bonds through this game. They share these real memories of going on heroic adventures together. And when it comes time to potentially leave your company for a better opportunity, right? Maybe it pays more or is more convenient, they're leaving their adventuring party behind. And you'd be surprised. People have actually responded in our surveys anonymously. I would be far less likely to leave my company if we did this on a regular basis because I'd feel that bond. And it sounds kind of crazy. I totally get it. I totally agree with you if you're questioning that and feeling doubtful, but it's just true. People don't want to leave their parties behind. They're a known quantity. They have the chemistry, they have the bond, and it's a big jump into the unknown in another company where you don't know if you're going to fit in as well or if you're going to have as good of a bond in chemistry. So we're thinking a 5% reduction in turnover, reducing your turnover costs, and a 5% reduction in training costs. We think that whatever you're spending on training, you could say 5% by doing it by introducing this as well. So all in all, what this ends up being, taking into account average recruitment rates and turnover rates, this ends up being in total between cost reductions and revenue gains, 10% of the average employee salary per employee. So at the average agency that we've seen in our calculator, they pay 72,000 average salary to their employees. They get a 7 times ROI over the first year based on these measurements. So at your companies, it's likely at some point you have done one of these 4 assessments, personality or work style assessments to help manage your team better. You might have done the Enneagram, 6 types of working genius, the DISC assessment, Clifton Strengths by Gallup, maybe Myers-Briggs. Here's the problem with all of them. They're very difficult to remember and apply. I've taken the Myers-Briggs assessment maybe like 10 times over the course of my life. I can never remember what my combination is. And people I've talked to tend to agree they have no idea what their 4-letter combination is unless they look it up. So it's difficult to remember. It's difficult to apply. It's hard to be at work with your coworkers and say, okay, I know your 5 Gallup strengths are woo, communication, responsibility, relator, whatever. Or, oh, yeah, you're low I and high C. It's difficult to remember and apply. Enneagrams, on the other hand, are way too much personal information. And this might not be evident to many of you, but if you look into Enneagrams online, they are trauma related. They have a lot to do with childhood information that really shouldn't be shared with coworkers involuntarily or through a required work assessment. If you look up, why are 5s the way they are, you will see information about why they probably are the way they are and the way their personality works that people don't want their coworkers to necessarily know unless they choose to divulge it personally. So it's too much personal information. Also, these aren't cute, right? You can't be at work and think, I'm having difficulty working with Greg on this project. It's because he's, high S. Like that's so hard to apply, or because he's a 6. It's just it's impersonal. It's hard to remember and apply, and it's not cute. So part of what we've done is we've made it cute, and I'll show what I mean. Also, there's no way to practice the application of these, right? The only way to apply them is in real life. You can't practice them as a game. It's awkward to bring them up without feeling like you're overstepping. Like, oh yeah, Sally, I know you're a 4, or I know your Gallup strength is this. That probably means that you're going to struggle with this. Even as a manager, it's uncomfortable to say that. So it's not cute. It's not easy to relate to. So we wanted to create something that, number one, is all those things and allows managers to pair teams together and hire smarter and create more diversity and complementary dynamics within the team, and even pick the right people for the right projects to play to their strengths. So we created the hero system. What this is players take a 2-question assessment at the beginning of the first session. There's 3 options for each question. So this isn't like a 2-hour assessment. It's very quick, but it's extremely insightful. We basically, what we did was we took all these assessments, combined the best of them, and simplified it. And we find that depending on your hero type, it's clear which of these you relate to, but it's not exact. So there's 3 identities they can have. Identity means they answer, this is what makes me most engaged. I feel most in my element when I could do this all day long, right? Stick me in this spot, I'll do it for free. They're either a motivator, they're great at inspiring other people, leading, thinking big picture. They're an analyst, they're great at collecting information, strategizing solutions, analyzing complex problems. Or they're a guardian. They're great at managing risk, protecting other people, caring about the group's well-being, prioritizing social harmony, and then their approach. This is their answer to the question, when I encounter an obstacle, this is how I approach it. Connectors are great at persuasion, influence, drawing connections between ideas and environments and people, being able to approach a situation and say, this goes there, I understand how it all connects. And they consider themselves to be very empathetic and sociable. The second is pioneers. They challenge norms. They look for alternative paths. They are risk takers. They like to forge ahead in new areas. And then the third is stewards. Stewards are people who love systems, meticulous details, discipline, and they're great at taking information or people and organizing them. extracting insights. So your hero type is determined by your combination of these two things. You might be an analyst pioneer, a rogue. You might be a motivator steward, a knight. I personally am a motivator pioneer. I'm a maverick. Here are all the hero types. So we have the charmer. This is the motivator connector. If you've actually played D&D, this is usually called the bard, but we have changed the name so that they're things everybody can recognize. Charmers inspire and uplift. They're masters of storytelling, enthusiasm, and influence. They make great salespeople and team leaders, right? In the game, they are performers. They have a performance art. Maybe they're musicians, or we had somebody do puppetry the other day and play the accordion. They're great at influencing the world around them. Then we have the Mavericks. Mavericks are motivator pioneers. They drive innovation and change at the front line. They passionately advocate for bold ideas. They're highly protective. They're advocates. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs and CEOs are Mavericks. But really, there's very little relation between job titles and hero types. There tends to be overlap sometimes. Then we have knights. These are motivator stewards. So knights offer disciplined leadership. They like order, stability, collective achievement. But each of these types also have weaknesses, right? The knight might struggle to share the spotlight, or the maverick might struggle with individualism and being a lone wolf, or the bard might struggle with conflict because they love to have everybody on the same page. Next up, we have the mystic. This is an analyst connector. So mystics provide deep insights and foster diplomacy. They like to harmonize environments, systems, and people. In the game, they can turn into animals and manipulate nature to help the team. Rogues are analyst pioneers, so they're creative problem solvers, right? They like to pioneer new strategies and concepts after analyzing and intaking information. They want to constantly seek novelty and new solutions. Then we have the wizard. They're an analyst steward, so they are organizers and optimizers. They draw in information, they analyze spreadsheets, for example, and they want to master and optimize complex systems. They want control over the unknown, but they might struggle with emotional intelligence, for example. The saint is a guardian connector. So they like to guard their group, they like to manage risk and protect each other, and they do so through their empathy. So they nurture and support, they boost morale, they're great at protecting well-being and building connections. In the game, they heal their teammates, they have a divine connection with whatever god they can imagine that gives them special powers. The ranger is a guardian pioneer. They safeguard the team through unfamiliar territory, managing risk and scouting possibilities. And then lastly, we have the warden, the guardian steward. They are people who arrange people and processes. So they're great in operations roles. They excel in quick judgment, integrity, and responsibility, holding everybody to a high moral standard. We added one more level to this because we thought it needed some more nuance. And these are the different heritages people can have. And this people seem to enjoy the most. You can be a human, somebody who's a critical thinker. The question for this is, my team can always count on me too. So humans say, assess and critique our output. But their downside is sometimes that can stifle creativity, right? We have tieflings who are kind of like half devils. They're great at leaping into action. My team can always count on me to leap into action and help us gain momentum, but they can miss the details sometimes in their speed to action. We have gnomes. They're great at tinkering and improving on systems. They're the people you know who are constantly creating new ways to approach the same problem and iterating and refining. But as a result, they can struggle to actually get things done because they're still working on the process. Lastly, we have elves. They're great at thinking and planning, but that maybe prevents them from taking action because they're overthinking and overplanning. Every person who's taken this assessment, when they get their result, I'd say 95% of them go, you've nailed me. In 2 questions, you nailed me. This is like spot on for me. And as you can tell, these are much more simple and easy to remember than letter combinations or numbers, right? It's, Greg is a wizard. He's going to be perfect at turning this spreadsheet into a business plan. So I want to show you something we've built, and this is what you'll get access to today. We input all that information and actually a 20-page document of further insights on each of these hero types into a ChatGPT bot. Now, if you have GPT Plus, you'll be able to use this right away as much as you want. I believe if you have a free account, you will get a limited number of messages with it. You can ask the hero system anything. So once you actually do questions with your team, or you can have them take the quiz on our website and you can input them here. It's a way to ask. It's like an operations manager or CEOs or HR managers right-hand bot. So you can take the quiz with it if you like. It's suggested here, or you can say, hey, Greg is a knight and Sally is a wizard. They're having difficulty collaborating on a project. Any tips? Okay. He'll come back and say, Greg is a knight, a motivator steward who excels in leadership, discipline, and a relentless drive for achievement. He values structure and efficiency. Sally is a wizard. She brings analytical prowess, meticulous planning, and a thirst for knowledge. She thrives on organizing information, but might get bogged down in perfectionism. Greg needs to communicate his vision and goals more clearly, so Sally can share her detailed plans and insights, which will align their approaches. And they can realize, oh, we actually share the steward trait. We both want to keep things orderly and clear and detail-oriented. So they can figure out, okay, and you as a manager can say, all right, Greg, you do this, Sally, you do this. It's going to help you align better. And it's always going to ask you a question afterwards. How do you think Greg and Sally typically handle disagreements on the project? So you can have a conversation with it. Your team can also use it. They might say, and if you're actually a Questers participant, it's loaded in. So if they just say, I'm Asa, it knows the hero type. They don't have to put it in. But in this case, let's say I'm Asa, I'm a Maverick, and Kelly, our team's wizard, is really frustrating me. How can I help her see things my way? I thrive on independence, innovation, and leading bold changes. If you can't already tell from this business, I prefer fast-paced, action-oriented approaches. And there'd also be the level of their heritage. So, hey, Asa, you're a gnome maverick, and Kelly is a human wizard. To help Kelly see things your way, frame ideas with data, support it with logical reasoning. This aligns with her analytical nature and helps her see the value in your approach. Find common ground by identifying areas where her meticulous planning can enhance your innovative ideas. So hopefully everybody can see this is a way to really speed up communication problems. So you don't have to intervene or be an intermediary. People are able to just connect. Let me share my screen again so you can see where to get it. Go to this link. I'll drop it in the chat. You just put in your email and it'll redirect you directly to the chatbot, which automatically gets added to your ChatGPT account. Something else we're doing that's totally free that I'd love for everybody to take if you'd like to is a remote culture assessment. So what this is, and I'll show you an example of this as well. Your team will take a survey in Google Forms. You also take the same survey. We compare your answers. So they'll answer 20 questions related to the 5 pillars of culture, which are their team dynamics, their engagement levels, their camaraderie, their culture, and well-being. We take that data once we know that the survey's been taken by everybody anonymously, and we'll put together a password-protected dashboard. And again, this is totally free to get. You get an overview of their average responses. It describes each of them. And you can see how your scores as a leader, what you rated for these categories based on, 7 or 8 questions per category, compare to your team. So you can see where the differences are and where you have misperceptions and misalignments. If the team left any comments or insights, it's right here anonymously. And lastly, we put together a custom summary and recommendations report based on your results. Plus a calculator where you can see based on your scores, how many billable hours and also productivity related revenue you might be losing based on your scores, your number of employees, and your average salary. That, if you want to take that, drop your email in the chat here on Zoom. I will send it to you over email, or feel free to Slack me. I'm on the Bureau Slack, obviously. It actually is time for Q&A. There we go.
All
I want
right.
to address Megan's question first, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
She said, I'm curious about the desire for team building based on length of time at a company, career path, and or obligations versus more free time to devote to work. That's really interesting. So regardless, this is an activity, at least for all the companies you've done it for, and maybe this isn't what you're saying. They do this during work hours. It's not expected to be done outside of work hours and interfere with their free time. It's something that's considered a work-related activity that doesn't feel like work. We've played with players of all ages, all career paths, all stages of their career, different backgrounds, and everyone has reported feeling lighter on their feet, higher morale, more relaxed afterwards, which I think to me, like if you have a better work-life balance and you're lower stress, you're going to enjoy your family obligations and your time with your family and your free time more if you're not drained by work or uncomfortable with your coworkers. I know for example, I have friends who really struggle, especially with a lot of Gen Z and millennials, especially their social anxiety related to work, right? Because especially with remote work, it's so much harder to tell who's upset with you or who likes you, who doesn't like you. This erases that. It makes it like so clear on a weekly or biweekly basis. Hey, we're all cool. You like me, I like you. You trust me, I trust you. That you can actually focus on enjoying your life outside of work rather than worrying about, the Sunday scaries and what's going to happen at work tomorrow.
What is there any kind of warning signs if someone were to try some of this that you would look out for?
Like happening in the game or something that means you should do it?
Uh, I guess that would happen in the game. Any kind of thing that like, hey, don't do this or lesson learned or any of that kind of stuff.
Well, a huge portion of this is we have players take a safety survey. One of the core components of D&D is that it's taking place in the imagination, right? And when people are in their minds together, hey, there's stuff lurking around in there that is vulnerable or uncomfortable or potentially triggering. And there's no way of knowing, hey, if you have, maybe you have a phobia of spiders, and then I say, hey, what monster is this? And your coworker says a giant spider. And you're like, I am super uncomfortable. So what we do is we have them take an anonymous safety survey before the games start, where we say, is there any topics or phobias or sensitivities or triggers that would bother you? We take those into account. We avoid them in game. And if a coworker brings them up, we move on, no questions asked. And anyone at any point in the game can text the facilitator the letter X if they're getting uncomfortable or triggered or whatever, or sensitive to a subject. And we just move on right away, no questions asked. So that's definitely something we keep in mind. We stay away from controversial topics as well.
Yeah, I'm assuming, code of conduct and all that fun stuff is in full effect.
Yep, exactly. Yep. That's a big portion of this as well, as people not at work, but there is an element in D&D culture of people using role playing as an excuse. Like it's not me, it's my character saying or doing it, and therefore I'm going to harass you. Like it's an issue with the culture. It's something that we work really hard to avoid. We make it very clear to players this is still a professional event. If you wouldn't say it to a coworker in a work environment, don't say it here. Role playing is no excuse for that, but we've had zero issue with that. People are very thoughtful and kind.
Well, I think that's what we've got planned today. This has been recorded. This will be shared out. Uh, Thank you very much, Asa. That's been
Yeah.
great. And like I said, if you have any questions that come up later or after you rewatch or look at the notes, he'll be happy to chat with you in Slack.
And last thing, very quick, if you're part of the bureau, you get 10% off everything on the site. So you just type in bureau lowercase in the promo code on anything on the site and you're good to go. All
Tuesday, y'all.
right, thank you, everybody. Have a great week.